So here we are, two podcasters in Los Angeles. If you don't mind, I'm going to start with a kind of a question a little bit, because I went to the beach yesterday, and then on the way home, I was using my GPS, and it took me up like some weird street, and I was driving through all these mountains, like next to Malibu, which I assume is possibly Topanga, and it felt like a different world. And I thought, I want to ask, do you feel like you're in a bubble?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It does feel like a different world out here in Topanga. It's like a little village in the mountains, but you have LA so close you can get there very quickly.
Right. But you don't have to deal with the day-to-day life of living in the big city.
No, not anymore. I used to live in Hollywood, but I moved out here about 2 years ago.
Right. Was that difficult and expensive?
Um, it was expensive, but at the time it was not an issue financially.
Right.
But we've lived in another house and then this house. So this is a little more, not so pricey.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and everyone that's tuning in, both Emma and I do podcasts, and we're recording at the same time, and this is a shared podcast, so we're going to go back and forth in all of our discussions, and we're going to talk. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that you went to the beach, because I just listened to your meditation, your kind of going to the beach meditation.
Oh, yeah.
The other day, and it was so nice. So yeah, and I also remember when I was living in Hollywood, because I did go to Runyon Canyon, where I know you teach.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I actually have been to a bunch of your classes, maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, far out. It's so teaching for such a long period of time in that highly public space has, I know a lot of people I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I've met so many people from all over the world. And I was gonna, are you Danish?
Yeah.
Okay, so I know. Well, I have two Danish acquaintances.
Okay.
One of them that used to take my class, Anne. No, I can't remember her last name. I think she was Miss Norway 1995.
Wow.
And then my friend Esben, who I've known even longer. But yeah.
I also know an Esben. Maybe it's the same guy.
Melby?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. The actor, right?
I don't know if he does acting.
When I met him, he was trying to be an actor.
Okay.
He had that James Dean kind of look. But I think now he's like into real estate or something.
I think he does photography.
Yes, he does that too.
Okay.
I think he might have been trying to flip houses for a while.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Small world, mutual friends.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to maybe just start with digging into your path in spirituality and in LA, because you do, the two things that I see you do, the Runyon Canyon and the black market yoga. I mean, that just sounds so interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It was just a lot of, like how I got there, it was a lot of series of accidents, and with retrospect and looking at from 20 years distance, I was looking for a way to stop emotional pain that was in my life, and I was searching and searching around, and I was reading books on Buddhism, and I had never delved much into that kind of stuff previous to that. And I thought that Buddhism and Hinduism and yoga were like all the same thing. I didn't really know. And I was kind of like couch surfing And I ended up at Runyon Canyon because I was just trying to kill time because I was like, didn't really have anywhere to live, and I was like staying with friends, and I just didn't want to be there all the time. So I would go and I'd walk in the park, and those classes that I teach now were already there. And I walked by and I said, well, I got a lot of time on my hands, and I'm looking into these spiritual things. And I didn't know at the time, I was just looking for a way out of my headspace. Rather than now, I think I would advise someone to look for a way out, and also work in acceptance, because acceptance is such a much more powerful tool than trying to push something out with, a yoga practice or drugs or, whatever. But so I stumbled across these classes and I said, well, I may as well. I thought it was connected to the Buddhism thing. Some people say it is, but and I went and I found a little bit of peace that I wasn't able to access with my intellect previous to that. So I got just really hooked right away, and I was a super hardcore student there. I would go to every class I could. When I ended up getting a job, I would purposely not answer my phone so that I could go to yoga. And, that story about the beginning, people that get into, people that get into yoga, I'll speak for myself, are all, we're craziness, dealing with the crazy mind and, looking to kind of settle it down and so we get into almost like an addictive state to because this thing is, we couldn't find this way to calm the mind, and then we find it and we don't want it to stop, and we become very attached to it. So it was good, and I eventually became a teacher there, and I can continue on monologuing about that if you want to know how that happened. I've been a student there for about maybe 2 or 3 years, and I'd gone to some other studios and stuff, but there was something different about just doing it in the park and just going up, and it was by donation, and it seemed very simple and pedestrian. I think if I would have went to, well, it's not even open anymore, like a place like Golden Bridge or Yoga West, or even Yoga Works wasn't what it is now, but like these things that are very fluffy, and sometimes can seem to the outsider or even to the insider, because I eventually did a ton of Kundalini yoga, but there was times when I'm like, I've joined a cult, and I'm just like, fuck, how did I join a cult, And if I would have went there first, I would have ran screaming. So the fact that I ended up at Runyon, and it was it was like I knew the people and I got to know the people. It was very simple, and it didn't give me that vibe. So my microphone's having a jump around.
Oh.
So I kept going, and as I said, I was going through this moment of unemployment, and randomly a friend of a friend called me and said, I'm opening a boutique studio, like gym type studio. Would you come and be the yoga teacher? Because I see you, because I would walk up La Brea every day with my yoga mat on, like every day, like a psycho. I would go there, it'd be raining, the teachers wouldn't even show up. I'm like, why aren't they here? Because all I wanted to do was just get there and do my practice, which was, this drug for me. So they called me and said, listen, we're going to have this place open in 6 months. We can pay for you to become a teacher. You can go out and become a teacher yourself, or you don't even, whatever you want to do, but we see how devoted you are, and we want to give you a job. And I did not have a job. So I said, I was also going through this period where I was just like saying yes to like whatever came in front of me. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Not like, because my mind had said to me, yeah, but you could probably tell them a list of other people that could do the job better than you. And it's in my head is saying, well, tell them about this person, because why would they want to bring, you're not even a teacher, you know? And to be honest with you, I felt like, I thought a teacher should study for 10 years or something with like some, you know, guru, or I don't like to use that word anymore, but for lack of a better word. And then at the end of your decade of practice, they select you to pass the, you know, which is at this point a very hysterical way to look at yoga, because I know people that did yoga for like 4 or 5 months and are like, I'm going to be a teacher. I went to, you know, such and such studio and they said that I should take a teacher training. And, you know, like you can't say to them, yeah, well, they don't pay that teacher enough. So that teacher gets a cut when you sign up for teacher training. So, you know, you tell them that, their head's just going to explode. And I have told people that and they don't come back to class anymore. So I stopped telling them that. So I had time, and randomly someone contacted me that I'd met in class and said, do you want to go to India? And I said, well, you know, I need to do a teacher training. Can I do that there? And I don't think I called it teacher training then. I'm not sure. 15 years ago, they might have called it teacher training. And she called me back and she said, you can do an apprenticeship with the Ashtanga master in Mysore, India. I said, okay, great, I'll go. And so I went to India.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did the yoga studio, did they pay for this, or?
I declined having them pay for it
Okay.
because I did have a little bit of savings. I had been injured on my previous job, and I was on disability at the time. I had really messed my knee up. So, and they were going to pay me for re-education, but I didn't have to show them like what my re-education thing was. So I had that money for re-education, which is what I spent it on. And I'm glad I didn't, because the place ultimately took a year to open. I had many lessons because the way that they set up the payment, basically I never made money when I taught there. And it never turned out to be like a job that sustained me. But it taught me a million and one things about being, you know, a yoga entrepreneur and what it's really going to take for you to do this, or at least the beginning stages. Because I have a tendency to be very idealistic about many things. I thought, you know, it's this spiritual thing, you know, and now it's opening up for me, and it did open up for me hugely. And I've seen other people that it didn't open the way it opened for me. I mean, the doors for me being a yoga teacher they just kept opening, and I kept just stepping through to the next one. And I don't know. It was
just your path.
Yes, it just worked. And I don't know how it worked. It just was for me. So I came back, and as soon as I came back, well, before I left, I had told the teachers at Runyon, I said, listen, I'm going to become a teacher. And, you know, I have this job offer, but I'm going to go, and I'm going to go study and be a teacher. And the teacher that I first told that to was Kamala. And she said, that's awesome. Can you teach for me tomorrow? So I started substitute teaching before I went to India, and then the other teacher, when he saw that I was subbing for Kamala, so I taught a ton before I even left to go do my so-called teacher training apprenticeship.
What year was this?
2005.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere like the mid-late of 2005. So I got really thrown into it. Like,
yeah.
Really, I've been so nervous.
You were?
Oh yeah, I was super nervous. I mean, even coming from a performer background, although I was the guitar player all the time. So like being the singer of a band and being the guitar player, like a guitar player like has a weapon, you know, it is this thing blocking them. So it's like, it's not as, and it's very loud, and I played in rock and roll. So it was very aggression based. So it's almost like you're assaulting the audience, but as a yoga teacher, you're trying to like facilitate like this other energy. So it didn't, and I was very serious about it. So I wanted to do a good job. It made me nervous for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the black market yoga?
Well, when I came back from India, I had gone, I'm just going to say the name of the studio. I had gone a decent amount to a studio called Liberation Yoga, which used to be on La Brea. I think they just recently moved, I'm not sure. And I really liked the vibe, and I thought that it was important for me to work at a place like that. And so as soon as I told them I was going, I told them I wanted to work there as well as the other place that had offered me a job. And they said, great, let us know when you get back. And, as soon as I got back, I went there. And I mean, at this point, years went on and they never hired me. Eventually, they brought me in as a substitute. And eventually they told me, which was a great irony and something I always tell people that tell me they want to be a teacher now, was they eventually told me that we're not going to bring you on as a teacher because you didn't do your teacher training here. Of course, they weren't offering teacher training in 2005. But I didn't bring that up. I was just like, okay, at least thank you for the message. And I understand. So I was reading a book about the life of James Brown, the soul singer. And he was talking about how he would play these clubs and the clubs would be packed, just like packed. Every place he played was just like packed. And then the promoter would be like, here's $100 at the end of the night. And he's like, $100? This place is packed. So he did a thing that he called wall to walling. And since I had been teaching for a while at Runyon, and Runyon got huge a couple years into me teaching there. I mean, like off the map huge. LA Times, KTLA News came down, did a piece on me. We would have like 80 students without even blinking. I mean, the field would be full of people doing yoga. So I thought, well, I have a moment here in time where I think I can reach a lot of people. If I can just find a room somewhere in this town and rent it and tell these people that I'm going to do this at night, because Runyon was in the morning, and we don't always have the night. And I had been doing classes at night at Runyon. I said, I think I can make it work, and if I don't, the worst that's going to happen is I get a little bit embarrassed because I failed and I lose a few $100. So I rented a couple spaces and people came. And I was like, wow, this is fucking great. And then in the beginning, I was doing like different musical, I was doing specific albums. I would do like a night of Miles Davis and Kind of Blue, the Kind of Blue album. I do a night of Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. And then it just started to become this thing, and it developed into my pop-up yoga studio. But it was all from the inspiration of James Brown, just to kind of take it over and, do it, because even back then, yoga wasn't as crowded as now, and they were not inviting me in. I mean, they were just like, and I couldn't have made it, I don't think, if I would have went with them the way that, everything worked out really right, somehow.
Yeah, that's cool. And when you're doing the black market yoga, is it like really loud music or are you talking over it, or how does it work?
That's a funny thing. And if you go like on my YouTube, I always think about it like in retrospect. I am the loudest yoga teacher you will ever meet, because I started at Runyon, which is like a third of a football field, right?
Yeah.
And I'm teaching 80. I taught 125 people there, and it was hard to count. So I don't even know how much it actually. So I teach in a very loud voice. I don't teach in yoga voice, and I don't personally care for yoga voice. So I'm a projector. I have to, because I'm trying to reach the person who's like way in the back there hiding because they think they're supposed to know how to do yoga before they come to a class. They don't want anyone to see them. So I got to speak really loud so they can see me or hear me. So when I transitioned to black market, I had developed that style over years. But black markets are actually, well, it's not, neither of these things are happening now because of our current situation.
Right.
But that loud voice went in. So yeah, the music can be kind of loud and I talk over it. But it can get really loud at some of my classes. really loud. I mean, I think volume is a powerful thing with music. Um, it's just like, this is what it is. You really can penetrate the audience with that kind of electricity.
And sometimes you have live performances there as well, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do. And a lot of times it has to be an artist that I know. And it works most of the time. Some of them have been students, so they understand the sequencing of my class, which is, I don't teach the same class all the time, but the arc and the sequencing of the class is always very similar. So there's like a rhythmic lift and approach to the way that the class goes. So the artist needs to know that, because that's the way that I program the music most of the time. Yeah, I've had all sorts of people, but not yoga music, because I'm not, I don't know if you know, I've done 2 albums of yoga music under the name of the Dharma Gypsys. Uh,
Yeah,
and
beautiful music.
Yeah, thank you. But when I first got into yoga, like, the few times I would go to a studio, um, I had, had decades as a musician behind me. So I was like, what the hell is this music? And why aren't there guitar solos? And like some of it, no offense to anyone making music, because I actually reviewed music for Yoga magazine for as long as I could. And it was difficult for me, because the person who's a devotee of something and then decides to record music is a different person than a musician, right? And um, being a devotee, if you want to make music, even if it's devotional music, is not enough for me. And like, some of it just bothered me. And I thought, well, I can really do something different here. And for a while, I thought it was going to be a problem. And then the world changed back then. And, I started out doing this music with guitar and trying to do this like Pink Floyd-y, Led Zeppelin-y thing. And I thought, man, people are going to be really upset, because it's not Krishna Das, although I love Krishna Das. And he is one that is above, he's very musical, and it's great. But I thought, people might be pissed that I did this. But then within a few years, everyone was doing basically the same kind of thing. And it was really expanding, and they were expanding. And then the festivals came, and, all that.
Very cool. I can't
Yeah.
wait to try it when everything opens up again.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know at this point what the future of the yoga studio is. I'm lucky. At Runyon, we're outside. We got a big space. We can be far apart. I haven't restarted there. As far as Black Market, I don't know. I've been on Zoom. I can't imagine. We can talk as much as you want about it, but I don't think we're going to go back to anyone being comfortable being in a 20 by 20 room with, 10 people. It's like, I don't see that happening, at least no time soon. So the yoga studio is going to have to figure out what's next. And if it's even feasible, because we live in Los Angeles, where the rent on a space like that, if you're not packing them in, how are you going to pay the rent? And if you can't pack them in because people need to be 10 feet apart, indoors even, it's I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Luckily, I was never a part of the yoga system. I was never brought in. I worked outside of it. And when this happened, I needed to, and it was kind of stressful for me, but I said, well, how am I going to facilitate these classes? I have a student base, and I'm not going to just be like, oh, sorry, everyone. Everything's, so I had to go through a lot of different, I did it on Facebook Live. Facebook changed their format. I started to get bounced off. The classes would get, they would end in the middle of the class, and I have to try to log back on. And I'm like, this is, it was very, very it was uncomfortable, and I had to keep reinventing the way that I would serve my people, because those are the I'm there for them. That's why I facilitate what I do. So I don't know what's going to happen with any of them.
So what did you end up with using?
I'm on Zoom right now,
Okay.
and I'm paying, it's $15 a month or something.
Okay.
And thus far, it's not been problematic. It's been great. It's been really good.
That's good.
Yeah. Because I'm also not in a position like to go on unemployment. I mean, so much of what I did was, I was like dealing with the people directly. So I was doing cash business and even my privates. And I have one corporate class that's not back, and they paid me with a W-2 and a check and everything. But like, I'm like an outsider, I'm the last person that the city's going to come along and be like, oh, well, let us, figure out how to help you pay your rent. There's that whole other side to it. But again, I've been very lucky in all of it, I guess. So let's talk about you. Tell me about the church that you sang in as a teenager. And you said it was a job. So they hired you to sing?
Yeah.
As part of the choir?
Yeah.
So like, was that something you did like this is my only job, or like this is the part-time job I do on Sundays?
It was a part-time job for teenagers. So I started when I was 13, and I think I was there for 8 years. So every Sunday, and practice on Thursdays, and then sometimes in the middle of the week if there were funerals, and sometimes on Saturdays for weddings as well.
Was this a Christian Catholic church? What kind of church?
It's so Denmark is Christian Protestant.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the Church of Denmark, I think it's called.
I want a picture of the church. Like
Okay.
I don't want you to show me a picture. I want you to tell me a picture.
Yeah.
Like, what color is it? A brick building, a stone building? What color are the stones? Is it peaked roof?
It's stone, and the oldest part of it is like it's from, I think it's from around 1,000 or 1100 or something like that. Really old, and it's a long round walkway, and it's dark. I think the bricks or the stones are like reddish color, or like red grayish. And then so you walk through this, and then you walk into the church itself, which is newer because it's, sometimes they burn down and then they were rebuilt. So this one is newer. I think it's only maybe like 400 years old. And that one is painted white, and it has high ceilings, and it's kind of like a pyramid shape.
The ceiling, so 4 peaks in the ceiling?
Yeah, so like this in the ceiling, and then so yeah, and yeah, beautiful colored ornaments on the glass has like these kind of painted pictures. Yeah,
stained glass, right?
Yeah. And then there's like a yard that has a lot of roses. And then the buildings around that, so it's like completely squared in. And these old buildings, they used to be where the monks lived, but now they are they have it's like a retirement home. So
cool.
older people live there now. So pretty cool place, I would think, for if I was, if when I'm really old, I would think it would be a really nice place to live.
And are they, is that a Jesus-based religion? Protestant?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So this is a weird question. Well, when I went to church, and because I was raised a Catholic, and I don't know if this sounds, I don't know, whatever, however it sounds is however it sounds, but like to walk into this room and then we sit, and then there was like this giant like statue of a man crucified who was Jesus, and that's like really hardcore. Um, I don't. Was it someone on a podcast? Someone said to me that they felt like Catholicism was a death cult, and I was like, wow. And then when he said that, I remembered, we would all go and we would sit in front of this statue of a man nailed to the cross, and I thought, geez, that's really upsetting.
It's a bit macabre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think of your church. Does your church have a macabre quality to it? Because I think I'm confusing your part of the world with like where all of the death metal came out of.
No, that's the same area.
Oh, right.
Well, I mean, a lot of the death metal bands are from Scandinavia, and Denmark is part of Scandinavia.
Okay.
But I think most of them are from Norway and Finland, and maybe Sweden as well.
Do you listen to any of that? There's a new band I've been listening to a little bit. Did you listen to any of that music?
I didn't really listen to metal myself, but I've always had a lot of metal friends, and so I've been exposed to it a lot.
Okay.
But it's not something I would put on. I think the most that's over in that area is more like folk metal. If it sounds like if it sounds like Vikings playing rock music, then I like it.
So is that a band called Wardruna?
Yeah, that's a cool band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that singer was in a death metal band before he formed I think. I was just turned on to this. In fact, the person who told me that Christianity was a death cult turned me on to this. But I really like them. They're really great, man. They sound like Dead Can Dance a little bit. It's just, I think, a European band that does what people maybe kind of term new agey music. But yeah. So you sang for 8 years in that church.
Yeah.
So was it a large choir or like several people, 20 people?
I think we were like 25 in total, but we weren't all there every time.
Go ahead.
So each time, every Sunday, usually we would be maybe like 10 people.
Okay. Did you sing harmony with the 10 people, or were there sectional, like you're singing low, you're singing high, soprano, alto, or was there harmonizing?
Both. So the regular Sunday, church service is usually just the hymns, and we wouldn't do harmonies on that. But if we had like a church concert, then we would be practicing, and they would be in harmonies.
What language?
Danish.
Okay. How old is the Danish language?
Oh, well, it has its roots in Old Norse, which is what you come most close to it if you go to Iceland and listen to how they speak, because they were so isolated there that their language didn't change that much as the rest of us. So it is rooted in Old Norse, which is very old. I don't know exactly how old, but it's very influenced as well by German and English and Latin as well.
Right. German is such a I don't know about Latin, but German is such a harsh language. It's like hard to sing, I would think. I toured Germany 3 times, and some of a lot of the bands, they still sang in English, which is funny. But yeah, it's a hard.
Yeah. It has a hard sound, I agree, but it can also be beautiful. I mean, they don't always, it depends the dialect as well, I think.
Right. So singing in the church as a teenager, uh, did you have a spiritual experience? I mean, um, sometimes I don't sing harmony well, but sometimes just singing harmony with someone is a spiritual act. Did you have any like moments of like, I feel the presence of the higher power or the whatever you want to define it as?
I don't think so, no. I did like it. I like the energy in there because the priest was she had a very light vibration about her, and I liked singing, and I liked the hymns. Most of them were very beautiful. So in that way, it was an uplifting experience. But I didn't feel like, you know, Jesus is here or anything like that.
That's
That you see
I
sometimes in some churches over here, you see people are really feeling the Holy Ghost. I've never had that experience, no.
actually I have. Well, we'll
Yeah?
talk about it a little bit later because your priest was a woman.
Yes.
So would this have been like in the 80s?
90s.
Oh, okay. Is that normal or not
Yeah,
normal?
that's
It,
pretty normal, yeah.
how do you know before, like in the 70s and the 80s, would there have been a female priest?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. I don't think growing up in the Midwest, I ever saw a female priest. They were always nuns, but that's Catholicism. And you said it was a Protestant church.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are probably, well, I'm just guessing now. I haven't looked into it, but whenever I go to church in Denmark because of some kind of event, it's usually a female priest actually. So I would think there's maybe more female priests in Denmark than men. But I'm
Wow.
just guessing. I must underline that.
Okay. So what do they wear?
A long black robe, and then they have the white. Um, can't remember what that's called.
The thing that around the neck?
Yeah.
Like yeah, okay. And they have a hat or a hair covering?
No.
Does she have long hair or short hair?
She had, I think her hair it was like till under her ears, maybe.
Right. Okay. How old was she?
I think she was probably in her 60s.
Wow. So I'm just trying to get a picture. Do they bring flowers in or anything? Do they decorate the church beyond what's in there?
On the altar, there are usually flowers, and then if there's a wedding or a funeral, they also sometimes have flowers, all the way up through the church next to where you're seated.
Right. Can you see the stones of the church that it's made from the inside, or you said the walls are white, so the stone part of it is just the exterior?
Yeah, you only see the stones when you walk through the hallway or if you're outside looking at it.
Right. Yeah. I walked into a church in Mexico City that had been built on the ruins of what was it? Damn it! I don't know if it's the Aztecs that were there or sorry. But I walked in there and the church was really giant and old, but there was a very interesting energy in there that I felt. It was very physical. So I'm always curious about those spaces. So if you noticed a vibration in any space, be it this church or some other church, do you think that vibration is in the stones and the wood and the plaster, or do you think it is in the inhabitants, the people?
I think it's because I do feel when you go into a church, it does feel you can sense that it is a place of meditation, and it has that calmness. And I remember when we were teenagers hanging out in my hometown, we actually sometimes we would go hang out in the Catholic church. There was only one Catholic church in town, And we would go in there and just hang out because we just liked it, and no one was ever in there. It was completely empty, and we just liked the vibe.
So
Yes.
you lived in a world where the church doors were open 24/7?
I think just during the day.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can always go into the church and sit, and meditate. And I think that the reason why it feels like that inside the church is because of the many, many, many years that people have sat there and meditated and prayed and put their best intentions into it, and having, thoughts of the spiritual world. And I think every that energy is then ends up being in the room.
Right. So, well, we both have podcasts, and you have a podcast that is called Nordic Magic Link, which is based on somewhat on talking a bit about shamanism or shamanism. How do you pronounce that?
Shamanism.
Shamanism. What is
Yeah.
shamanism? I don't know. Um, my last guest had talked about his Catholic grandmother reaching out to a shaman, and how it was like kind of this sin. So I heard you talking about the church, and you talked about meditation, which I never heard about in my church. And then also, how does that your new ideas and lifestyle fit against that backdrop? Well, like if you went back there and talked to whoever ran the choir and say, "Hey, man, now I'm into this like old ideas about meditation and shamanism and stuff." Are they accepting of that?
I would think they would be, but also they didn't expect us teenagers in the choir to be religious. We were there, it was a job.
Oh,
And so I didn't grow up as a Christian either. I was not a member of the Church of Denmark, which I think a lot of people are in Denmark. I grew up with kind of a new age. My mom was very into all the new agey stuff. So for me, it was just a job, and but a job that I liked, because I got to sing, and I it was always interesting to me to hear what the priest was saying that Jesus has said. Like I just like anything spiritual. Like I like to hear all the different ideas that people have had, or how they interpret these old books. Is still fascinating to me, even though I'm not a Christian.
yeah. How do you think growing up and being a child that is, because we're imprinted the deepest in our first several years of life, because I was imprinted with the Jesus thing, right? So you were imprinted with more of this new agey thing. How do you think? Have you thought about how that has affected your view of uh, all of the different avenues of spirituality?
Yeah, I think it made me very open-minded.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because
And just being growing up in that environment where you're a little bit and if you tell people about what you believe or what your mom believes, they think you're a little bit, cuckoo. So you're kind of like on the outside a little bit of normal society looking in, and you just have a different, viewpoint. You see things maybe from a different perspective.
right. Was that ever a problem?
No, I just remember that, I could get into discussions sometimes with mostly boys that they didn't believe in anything spiritual, and but usually the girls were into it.
What is your definition of something spiritual?
So believing in a life after death, believing in it could be believing in ghosts. It could be believing in fairies. It could be believing in reincarnation, in magic, anything in this regard.
Right. Okay. Well, my brain just froze for a second. So the reason I asked that earlier is because I said that I had had this interesting spiritual experience, and I've had several that were very, very like huge inside of me. It was not like I didn't like see like an alien spaceship come down or anything. But like,
You want to share?
yes, I'm going to share. So at one point, I was working before the yoga teaching thing, and actually crossing over. I was building movie theaters in people's houses, but some of it was like low-level construction. So I was like basically like a low-level construction worker. So I was working very physical and very hard some days, not always. Some of it was it was a great combination of the mind and the body because I would have to figure out electronical things and the vibrations of the room and the speakers, but then I would also have to put the speakers in the walls, and so I'd have to cut holes in the walls, and I'd have to, know all the different things about that. And I was working at a house in the valley, like a probably I don't know if it was an 8-hour day, but it was close to that. And I drove through Laurel Canyon, and as I came down Laurel Canyon, I drove and I was very tired, but like a tiredness that is not there. Like tiredness and work can take away your anxiety. So it's like a fully everything used up, all everything physically used up, mentally used up, everything like in almost like a meditative state, a state of peace from like really using my body strongly. And as I drove onto Hollywood Boulevard, it's lined with all those palm trees, and I remember the sun, and I feel like the sun was coming somehow in through my window, which time may have like changed in my mind because I know at that time if I'm driving, I would have been driving east on Hollywood. The sun would have been behind me. But I remember the sun being in my windows and my windows being down and being very comfortable. And then there was a moment where I felt like, I felt like Jesus was sitting next to me, and I felt like this presence, and it went through my whole body, and I'm actually like the hair is standing up on my arms now, and I felt this presence of someone not of this world, and I thought it, and I had the feeling, and I could visualize it, but I didn't look and see it, but I could visualize it as a feeling in my mind, and it was Jesus. But the thing about that is, I've later thought, and it was a great feeling, and it was a great moment, and I felt at peace, and I felt safe in the world, and all the things that a spiritual connection is supposed to give you, and they were all there for that moment. It was very strong. It embodied my body and everything around me, within a maybe like a 3 feet radius. I felt all of this energy and this light, the light which was the sun, and the lightness of the light being light in itself, the light feeling of the light. But I thought, had I been raised a Hindu, would I have sensed Shiva, right? What and two, are they the same, right? And because of my imprinting, being raised a Catholic, and at such a small age when the mind is still being physically developed, and that information was put there, so that information replayed as the Christ rather than the Buddha or whoever else. So that was my moment there.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those moments, but that was the only one with Jesus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask that. Okay.
Yeah. There was another one. I was writing a book, and I've gone through periods of my life where I've done. I don't know about meditation, but just sitting for long periods of time doing nothing. Extremely long periods of time. Hours. Picking up a guitar, playing, maybe reading, and then just sitting and sitting and sitting. And I felt as if something was coming from above me and coming down inside of my body from the top, which I'd never felt before. And as it got down to my chest, I actually freaked out and like panicked and pushed it out because I don't know what I thought, but it felt I felt somehow threatened. I don't know
Okay.
why, because I had never experienced it before. And then it left whatever it was, and there was a voice in my head that said, "You're in the right place." And I was sitting on my bed, and I stood up, and I walked around my small apartment, and everything was shiny. Like everything had this different light quality to it, and I kept and that thing that phrase that you're in the right place was like it wasn't just like you heard it once. It was like this non-verbal vibrational energy that inhabited uh, the entirety of my body. And I just remember walking around and everything was like everything like it had been like dusted and oiled or something. It was right clean and shiny, and I don't know how long that lasted. It could have been like maybe a half hour or something, and then it dissipated. I
Sounds a
never,
little bit like a Eckhart Tolle's experience with awakening.
yeah, except for I pushed it out. I only got halfway. I was like, no.
Well, if it felt threatening to you, I think then you did right to push it out, because it shouldn't. If it's just energy, good energy, I don't think you would feel that way.
It's yeah, and that's probably right. Although, like I said, the after effect felt good, but who knows? Lots of
Well,
things.
the after effect, it could just be the fact that you actually came into this state of mind through your, playing music or sitting there. That's a type of meditation. So you went really deep into this state of mind where you then saw things from a different perspective, from a more awakened perspective. And then, but that other thing could then maybe enter whatever it was, because when you are in that state of mind, you are in connection with, you are in a different realm where there are other beings that you can communicate with.
Right? What do you think about that? Should you communicate with other forces that are not a physical person standing in the world?
Yes. Well, in shamanism, that is the main practice. The main thing about shamanism is that you communicate and you work with spirits. And it can be your ancestors, or it can be nature spirits, or it can be pretty much any type of spirit. It can be your spirit guide, or guides. Um, it can be like if you need like a certain energy, maybe sometimes you need the energy of a lion. You can communicate with the spirit of lion, so there's like all different possibilities. You can communicate with the old gods of different religions that we had in the past, which for me are just, they're like archetypes of different types of energy that we gave them names to, and we said who they were because it was easier than to connect with them if you give them a name and you give them a role.
Yeah.
And
What's
so in
interesting,
shamanism, you that's the whole thing. You connect with spirits and you ask them for help and communicate with them.
is that done through a practice or just like a random, like me saying, hey, grandma, you know, can you put in a good word for me right now?
Yeah, you can do that. In shamanism, they typically, and we see this in all shamanic spiritual practices all over the world, because shamanism has been in all cultures all over the world at some point. But you um you typically go on a journey, and the journey is inside your mind. So what you do is you use typically drums or rattles, or in the Scandinavian tradition, singing. So you have to drum for like a long time, because that repetitive sound, it puts your mind into theta wave state where you can travel in different realms and communicate with spirits. So this is what people typically did. The shamans would do this in different places all over the globe.
Do you think modern music is facilitating that for the masses, and the masses are not quite aware of where they're being taken? Like say, well, any music, but certainly 4/4 music. Which, 4/4 music is what most rock music or techno music, boom, 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 which matches the heartbeat and then can adjust the physical heartbeat with the tempo of the music, making the audience reach altered states.
Yeah, I do think it is hypnotic. And so if you are listening to something over and over and over, you might want to consider what are the words that you're listening to, because you are telling your subconscious this. So it is being imprinted in your psyche. So I don't like so much a lot of the music that people listen to today, because there's a lot of negativity and like there's like a song that's just like work, or like
Right.
these like weird things that just, okay, this is what you want to put into your subconscious. I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah, that's because I immediately went to AC/DC Highway to Hell.
Okay.
And I thought, well, and I thought, what are the ramifications of something like that? But I don't think the message is let's go to hell. First of all, I don't believe in hell, and I don't know if you do. And you can do you believe in hell besides some of what is being lived out on Earth right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's a state of mind. And I mean, in shamanism, we do believe in different realms, but they're not good or bad. They're just different energy and different vibrations.
Right, right. Because I was just thinking about it now, and like a song like Highway to Hell, if you listen to it, it's kind of like about it has like a kind of an acceptance vibe to it. Like I'm just going to live this kind of life, and this is what I chose. And but it also has like a little bit of this working class, um, like another acceptance again. That this is who we are, and let's celebrate it, and let's celebrate it together. And if people say we're doing wrong, well, then that's fine. We're on the highway to hell, and when we'll be, all my friends will be there too. So. Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said. The different. You didn't say deities, but the guides or have had different names. And do you think the names are like a problematic to where the names? Because I feel like the labeling of a name, then there's almost like characteristics that are going to be thought of, like if you experienced some outward energy without the name or knowing, you would have a different experience than if you said, well, I met a deity named, Bob, and I knew that Bob normally helps you with guitar playing, so we talked to Bob about guitar. But had you not known that it was Bob, like maybe Bob had like all this information about like, something more important. I don't know.
It's a good question. I don't know. In all the different cultures, people they've had different deities, and they gave them different names to describe the energies that each deity represented. And so in Nordic mythology, a deity like Freya she's like the goddess of love and spring and magic and fruition and power. So instead of saying like, oh, I'm calling in magic and power and love or something like that, you can just call out for Freya and ask for her blessings.
Right.
So I think maybe this is the way it was used.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you believe that, because I've thought about magic, and I'm actually very conflicted about the idea of magic. Um, Not that whether I believe in it or not, but some people believe that their lives are kind of like laid out and the path is laid out. So if we're consulting or trying to direct through magic, are we fighting against the natural stream of things? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, in shamanism and in Wiccan practices, the whole idea is to work with nature and with the forces that are there at the moment. So you wouldn't want to work against any natural energies. You want to enhance them.
Right.
So it's like giving things like an extra push, you know.
So it's like extreme going with the flow.
Yeah, you could say
Right.
that.
Right. So as we recognize, you know, the river or whatever, then we say, well, we're going in this direction. We can maybe paddle the feet a little bit and maybe go
Yeah,
a little quicker, or maybe slightly go to the left or the right, or if that exists.
and ask the deities for help.
Right. Do they, when you speak to them, do you speak in English? Do you speak in
Danish.
emotions? You speak, oh, okay. You speak to them in Danish.
Yeah.
Do you think the deities speak all languages?
Yes. Well, I think they speak in a non-language, you know. It's just energy.
Right. So when you're speaking to them, you're just sending some energetic pulse that they're reading. They're not really understanding your words.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Or they might be able to, but but I think the word is powerful, and instead of just having the idea in your mind, I think it's powerful to say it out loud, because then you're also using the forces of this realm um to go along with where you want to push the energy.
Yeah, you saying that made me think that we're in need of convincing ourselves. And once we've convinced ourselves, it's as if the deities are already inside of us. And when we send it outward, then we have the confidence to use our strength that we either don't understand or that we are nervous about.
That could be another way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think people are drawn to magic? And why do you think people are drawn away from it?
um well, there's certainly a big push in the culture to look at magic, with Harry Potter and TV shows about witches and whatnot.
Oh, right.
um
I never even thought about that because I'm a little bit before that time.
oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
And I think also it's something that maybe if it speaks to you, it might be in your DNA, because we used to, before Christianity, we used to use magic in all cultures all over the globe,
Right.
because we used shamanism all over the world. So if you're called to this practice, I think it's could be your ancestors trying to reach you, say, do this, this will be helpful.
Yeah, and sometimes I don't know, like a shaman or a healer is working in things that are uh, earthly. Like, if someone comes to me and says, I have a stomach ache, and I make them a cup of tea and the stomach ache goes away, am I a witch?
You would be if you were living in 1500 in Europe.
Yeah, because I studied with a Brahmin priest the second time I went to India, and I approached him about studying meditation, and he taught me a lot of philosophy, and he told me I am a scientific yogi, which made me think about like these things. 'Cause magic sometimes, at least from the outside, is a way for someone to define something that they can't define. You know, as I often think about, we're very focused on the world that we sit on, the planet Earth, but it's very small. And like if you, especially at night, you go outside and if you just look, I mean, then you can get a giant telescope and you can look, and it goes on for really forever, or it doesn't seem like we can get to the end. So I often think about these things that we define as religion, spirituality, or magic, as you know, like things that we don't quite yet understand, and that may never understand, because it's like the whole God idea, which I know it's just unnatural for me to talk about, which I talked about a lot on this podcast. But like for me to say that I understand higher power or God is like saying I know where the end of the universe is, because it's like so much like I don't even think that my brain is capable of the possibilities, to even ingest the possibilities of this largeness that is beyond the beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, these things are, yeah, something like you want to know everything. You want to know the mystery, what's behind, what comes after death. But I don't think our brains are made to be able to handle that knowledge. There's probably a reason why we're limited in that way. But if we look back to our ancestors, they did have more knowledge about these things, or at least they had strong beliefs that they acted on, all over the world.
Yeah, well, 2 podcasts back, I did an interview with someone who does death preparation, just for like your bank accounts, and kind of like a will, but not, and like who's going to get your guitars, or and all this stuff.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about that, and it's interesting. Like I always have this. I have this saying that I don't believe anything any living person tells me about what it's like to be dead. And it's a blind spot, and there are lots of mythologies and stories, but yeah, it's hard to say that someone knows. But the further we go into time, it seems, at least in America, because I can't say, it seems we step away from the death. I mean, so I toured, when I toured Europe, I was playing with a death rock band, which is not the same as death metal, which is those people talk a lot about death, which is, I think, only as a form of rebellion, because no one else is talking about it. But I'm always thinking, like if we found out that when we died, there was this like prize that was really like that we knew without any doubt, like people might not stick around.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just interesting that we don't know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can look at, near-death experiences, and there are definitely a lot of those, and a lot of them, the ones where the brain was actually dead, where there was no activity in the brain, those are the ones you want to look at, because they actually tell you they experienced something that wasn't happening in their brain.
Right.
And that's really interesting to me, and also that they're all very similar when you look at near-death experiences.
So do you believe that the DMT is released in that moment?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Right. Because like my teacher who said I'm a scientific yogi in India, I'm always looking for the physical answer, so I'm always curious about that. I mean, it's funny we talked about Runyon Canyon because Nikki Sixx, the bass player from Motley Crue, died 2 blocks from there, in what is now, it used to be a hotel, but now it's an apartment complex. And he discusses his death experience in several books and videos, and leaving his body and the looking down at the body. Well, but I've left my body, but it was an accident and it freaked me out. But I wasn't dead.
What happened?
I had a psychedelic experience that it lasted a good part of the night. It was the next morning, and part of it was very kind of stressful, and there was like a stress response inside of me. And I was laying down, trying to sleep, which was difficult because there was some impurities in the psychedelics. And I was laying, and it was as if I felt a rumbling in my chest, and there was a sound like, and then I felt like I jumped out of my chest, not out of the head or anything. It was very much in the chest from the laying position. And I rose up. I didn't have a moment to look down or look around because I didn't know what was going on. And as I rose up suddenly, because I was laying in the dark, suddenly it was very bright. It was a very bright light. And again, I freaked out, and I'm like, you're out of your body. You're seeing a bright light. What if you can't get back? And then I was like, and I came back in. After long analyzing it, it was the morning, and I think that I probably went through my roof into my neighbor's apartment, and the lights were on. I'm not sure. But yeah.
So you think you went that high up?
Yeah. Well, 8 or 10 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I've only tried being maybe like this much out of my, like half a meter out of my body.
Yeah, well, I wasn't trying, but yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I felt light, so it makes sense that you would see light or feel light.
Yeah, the light thing is, was it Thomas Edison? Did he create the light bulb? I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
I think so.
yeah, the artificial light and the light of the sun, because it's a very interesting thing to go after. But there is a lot of talk of the light. But do you think the light is a visual thing or an energy force of lightness, like light? And it's because I'm a dyslexic. So there's light, and I think it's Light, and then is there Lite? Is that a light? But like lightness, or is that just a beer, light beer? I don't know. But but light and light, like being light like a feather, and being light like illumination. It's interesting that they're the same.
Yeah.
The sound is, do you use the same sounds for that in your language?
For light?
Yes. To be light, I am very light because I do not eat today.
No, but they're similar. So light, I feel light, I didn't eat today, is lit, and light as in sunlight is lys.
Lys.
Lys, yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you I think I read somewhere that you are a much needed rebel in yoga.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true anymore, but it used to be true.
Okay. Well, why are you a rebel, and in what way?
Well, I'm a rebel in the way that, like I spoke of earlier, where even early in the yoga explosion, which I don't know if it actually in 2005. Some people tell me it was happening already. I was unaware of it, um, and I didn't feel like in the and in the traditional yoga studio that I was able to get in. Which I didn't realize wasn't necessary. Um, so I have it's something about my DNA or something. But when someone doesn't let me in, there's it's like a fighting, right? And rebellion is a form of fighting. Rebellion is like a strong giving up. Like you're not going to let me in. So it's like I'm going to go to Studio 54 in New York in 1977, and I'm going to stand in line, and you're going to say, you can't come in because you're wearing ripped Levi's. So I'm going to go down the street, and I'm going to go to a place called CBGB's and tell them that I'm going to start a band called the Ramones and start my own scene. That's rebellion to me, right? So I went I didn't know anything like the yoga studio or the gym studio that hired me. It never panned out to be anything except for a very great lesson. Um, so I I felt like I was trying to get into this thing, and as I tried to get in, there were things about it that I thought, I don't know if I agree with this. I don't know if I because they're telling me I don't fit here. I'm not sure why, if it's just a business thing, which I think probably it partially was. Um, so I'm going to go against what they're doing, because if I'm going where everyone is going, it's going to be crowded, right? And you're like, but if I go to my own place as a rebellion against the masses, there's more space for me to create something that's my own, intuitively my own. Um, and it's I know I don't think I was very clear, because it's something that's in my nature that I don't quite understand fully in myself. But it's the same with the music. I'm like, why is this music like this? I like there's something about it that seems um, wrong to me, or almost insincere. So it doesn't go in. Like I remember Miles Davis saying about the way that music goes into his body, and he said, and I was like, it didn't go into me and feel right. It didn't feel natural. So I went away from it, which is rebellion. But I wanted something that I think was similar to that, like the discotheque of New York. I wanted to be part of the people and the music and everything. But as the Ramones didn't fit there, they had to create their own thing, which was seen as a form of rebellion, which was called punk rock. So my rebellion created Black Market, and I was already part of Runyon, which was a form of rebellion in itself. And I've heard people that own yoga studios talk shit about Runyon Canyon Yoga. We were there longer than almost all of the yoga studios, but they're just giving it away. We're trying to create a business here, and then there's up at the park just teaching yoga to the people, which to me seems like that's like so very, I want to say American Indian. I don't, but it's just like it's living on the earth. It's we're amongst the trees, and we're amongst the people, and we're doing this thing. But it was very outside of the system, which was creating itself in the moment. I mean, Yoga Works was not Yoga Works. Yoga Alliance was barely. It was in its infancies when I became a yoga teacher. I'm not 200 hour. Like if you read my bio is a rebellion against every other yoga teacher's bio in Los Angeles. And that's what you got that from. That's from my bio. So I read someone's bio and they say, I've always wanted to bring peace to the world, and I did ballet as a 5-year-old, and I've always been into my body, and I understand, and it's time to do this, and we all need to do this, and we're all gonna, and I'm just like, my God, if I have to hear that story on someone's Instagram one more time, I'm gonna scream. But this is before Instagram. But this is how I work as a human being. And I'm like, whether it's true or not, because I do want to bring peace to the people, I want to bring peace to myself. But if everyone else is saying that, I'm not going to say it. Because to me, at that point, it's boring. It's like we can't all do Stairway to Heaven. If everyone starts a band and plays Stairway to Heaven, why would anyone care? It's boring. So my thing is, what are they saying? And what is the exact opposite, but the absolute truth? It doesn't mean they're wrong. To me, it just means there's too many of them. There's too many people doing the same thing. And people do the same thing, in my opinion. This is going to sound judgy. And people say, well, it's a judgy person. And that's fine. And I think calling someone judgy is judgy in itself. So, but people are just following like this trend. How can I get a like? How can I get a thumbs up on my whatever, MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, so that I can be the one to deliver this beautiful project, which on some level muddies it for me slightly. So I'm very aware of what people are doing, and I'm very aware of the masses, which I'm very afraid of the masses. And if you study Freud, when Freud finished his practice and had learned what he had learned about humanity, the first thing he did was move to the Swiss Alps into an almost empty hotel because he wanted to be away from the masses. So I have this same instinct, but I use it as my natural business model. So if I hear everyone say this, I'm going to go as far over to the other side as I can and say, it's not necessarily the opposite, and it's not necessarily contradictory, but it's something that is true to me, but is fresh and doesn't have 100 people standing on the same space. So did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I might also be judgy, but I feel like there's a lot of these people who are searching for spirituality, and they do yoga, and they think that they're awakened. A lot of them, I would like to see a little bit more rebel spirit in general, because I feel like it is a little bit just following a trend, or without asking questions about the society they're living in and society that they're giving power to in a way. I would like to see more people on this spiritual path also actually dig into what kind of society is this, and what are we actually funding here, with illegal wars and whatnot. Yeah. So I was thinking if maybe you were a rebel in that regard as well. And I think you are.
Yes, it's possible. And the thing about awakening, it can be confusing because it's I think I spent time searching for awakening because I think it would stop me from suffering. And I read a lot on the subject, and I read about a monk who, upon his awakening, cried every day after his awakening because he saw the truth of the world. So I think awakening is multi-layered, and I think awakening never ends. And I think the initial awakening, and I think that, humanity is like, and this is not a judgment of anyone, but there is like a line, which is, complete enlightenment, which might be death, and then completely obtuse, which is like, I'm going to stay the way I am forever, or whatever. And we go along that line until we get to this end point. But in the beginning of awakening, I think that the first hits of awakening, when they come to a person, they think they got it all, but they don't know. And they should ask questions, but normally in that moment, and I've seen it, they don't ask questions. What they start doing, it's not everybody, and this is just a very small demographic. And just I want to point out something. I'm not making a general statement. I'm not trying to. But when they get that first taste of awakening, which is, like I said, it's like an onion. There's a piece and a piece and a piece and a piece and a piece, and you have to keep going. But when that first awakening comes, and I believe, let's put it on me. I believe that I turned around and said to everyone, "Don't you see this? How do you not fucking see this? Wake up, come where I am. It's so obvious. I know, I am here," right? And the second phase of awakening is realizing the embarrassment of the first phase. But a lot of people are in the first phase, and the first phase is very ego fulfilling, and it's very pleasurable, right? So it's spirituality as a quest can be dangerous if you don't have a guide, or if you don't have a guide that you're going to listen to, because when you get to that moment of initial awakening, which is maybe, could be step 1 through 100, but it feels like you got to 100. But when you get there, you're at a crossroads. You're always at a crossroads. But at that crossroads, the ego of awakening, your ego of being an awakened person, can lead you to the wrong space. And then you become this awakened person who's standing on the corner telling everyone how stupid they are because they're not awake yet. And you're stuck, and you're going to have to go back to 1 again because you're not going to get to 2, right? But most of the time we cannot be reached in that moment because we're like, I woke up, the pain has stopped a little bit. I see, I have all this new information. You're not even trying to, you're like, I have the information, it's power, and it's a frightening moment to witness from the outside. But as a person who experienced it themselves, it is an ego-based moment that is very, I can't think of a better word except for, I'm sorry, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous moment where you need to be thinking about who you are, where you are, and what you're dealing with, so that you can go to the next and not get demoted, because you're going to demote yourself. And when you demote yourself, you're not going to realize that you demoted yourself because you're still living in the ego of the first piece of enlightenment. That's a lot of shit.
Those are some very good points.
So I don't remember the question, but that was the answer.
I like it.
Yeah. So tell me about your music.
My music. Well, it kind of depends, because I've released a bunch of music.
Tell me what me asking you about music makes you feel.
Just confusion.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've released a bunch of music that's maybe like pop rock-ish with some Nordic folk elements. And now I feel the type of music that I do now in my work as with Nordic music magic, which is what I do with people when they come to see me. I'm singing just healing. So I'm singing Reiki energy. I'm singing what people want me to sing, what they want to attract in their life. I'm singing all these different things, and I'm just singing melodies that come to me, and I go where I feel my voice wants to go.
So it's improvisation.
Yeah, over a shamanic drumming.
Are you drumming, or you have a drummer?
I'm drumming.
What drum do you use?
It's like it's hanging in the background. You see it?
Is this an American Indian drum? You hold it and from the side and you strike it with a mallet, yes? Or you strike it with your hand?
It's I think it's a mallet. I think it's called.
Right.
And yeah, I hold it like on the side, yeah, like this. But I think it's an Irish traditional
Oh,
drum,
okay.
but it's just a drum that you can use for, it can be any type of like traditional drum when you do this type of work. So um, like a folk drum, I guess.
Are the rhythmic patterns based in something specific, or are you doing like four on the floor? Dum, 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 dum,
Four on the
dum.
floor, yeah.
Right, right,
This is what puts the mind in theta wave state.
right. Which is disco, which is because that's where four on the floor comes from. It's the kick drum for
Right, yeah.
right, which
It
is a
doesn't sound like disco though.
no of but theoretically
Yeah, yeah.
it's right.
Yeah,
So you
so that's why I'm confused because I don't know what if I'm describing the new type of shamanic music that I'm doing or if I'm describing the music that I've released, and I'll probably release more, I have plans for releasing more music and it is, like pop with a little bit of like folk influences, I
right
guess.
you said so seeing you so someone would search you out to they want to attract something in their life, they want to remove something. Can you talk me through, like, maybe, I don't want to know anyone's personal information, but like someone says, but my right hip hurts, or is what do you normally get asked about?
So what got me started, let me just go back a little bit. What got me started in this was I went on and took a shamanic journey workshop in Sedona. And so I learned to do these journeys. And in one of these journeys, it came to me that I wasn't born to sing cover band music, which I'd been doing for a living for a long time in Vegas and Asia. And I came here to use music as a magical tool. So this is something that came up in this deep meditation that a shamanic journey is. And so I was like, how do I do that? And I started thinking about it, and then I saw on Airbnb they started having these Airbnb experiences, and so I developed an idea for how I could work with people and music and magic, and I came up with Nordic music magic, and I pitched the idea to Airbnb,
Oh, that's amazing.
and I got through, and that's how I got started. So usually when people come to me, they want to, often they actually have their ancestors are from Scandinavia, so they're curious about this old tradition that they've never heard about. Because I'm using this old tradition that the stuff that we used to do in Scandinavia before the Christians came and forced us into Christianity.
Right.
So a lot of people are interested in it because of that, and so I think also because I live in Topanga, people visiting Topanga are already a lot of the time they're interested in spiritual stuff, and so that combination of they're already on a retreat here maybe, and then they see this on Airbnb. It's close by, and maybe they have ancestors from Scandinavia, and they like this type of experience. So they usually just come to me for the experience. They say, okay, I'm going to do a journey, a shamanic journey, and then the second part of the session is where we do the actual manifestation work. So then they tell me what they want to manifest, and then that's when I'm singing in these different energies. So they don't usually come and say I have a leg or anything that's hurting or anything like that. It's usually just experience, and they don't always have anything particular they want to manifest. Sometimes it's just, oh yeah, just healing or more wisdom or something like that.
But it seems like more often than not, it's people from your, well, I don't call it your part of the world. Do you speak that language to them? I mean, what is it, like 75% those people?
So they're usually Americans, but
Oh,
their ancestors are
oh,
are from Scandinavia because they see, oh, this is my sessions are called Nordic music magic. So if you have ancestors from Scandinavia, that usually that catches your eye. You're like, Nordic music magic, what's that? You know, my
right,
ancestors are from the north. I want to know what it is. So often I think that's why they come. But I've also had people from India or other places.
right. So I want to go a tiny bit back because I had a question about something. So you
Okay.
went on this, you went to Sedona, and then you went on this spiritual journey, and through that journey, somehow you either heard or recognized that you needed to not be a cover band singer. So when you heard that, were you like, did you go, oh shit, I don't know if I want to leave that, or I don't know how comfortable I am with like, okay, well, that's great, I heard that, but this is what I do.
Well, it wasn't like a voice saying, don't do cover band music anymore. It was just more like there's more to be experienced. You know, the shaman also said in one of the sessions, she said to me, um, when are you gonna stop singing what has to be sung and start singing what wants to be sung?
Okay.
And so that, along with my experience of feeling like I'm here to use music as a magical tool, which is what it is what it used to be in all shamanic cultures all over the world. This is what we use music for, spiritual experiences.
Right.
So it was like a returning to this.
Explain music as magic as if I didn't understand.
Well, traditionally we would sing things into being in Scandinavia. So we would have a we have before the Christians came, we had these traditions of typically a woman called a vulva or vulva,
Okay.
and she's kind of like a witch, I guess. She would travel around, and she didn't belong to any certain city or town or family. And so she would be called. They would go get her, I guess, or send the raven. I don't know how, how they called for her. But the myths, the sagas tell us this. So she would come and then she would do her magical work, which was singing, singing things. So you call her if you have a sick child or the crops are bad or something like that, and you call her and she's singing what needs to change, what needs to happen.
So, and explain that. So she's singing like, the rains are coming, the rains are coming, the rains are coming.
Yeah, that could be
Like,
it. Yeah.
right.
So calling in the rain if that's what you need, or calling in healing, or yeah. And that wasn't just used in Scandinavia. We see this in many shamanic cultures. So they didn't just use the drums or the rattle. They also used singing often.
Do you think singing came first or the percussion instruments?
I think singing came first.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And then also when you are singing and you're chanting, if you're singing the same thing over and over and over, you do put yourself into a deep theta wave state of mind, which can be like a meditation, or it can be like an actual, journey where you are trying to connect with your guides or other spirits.
So we can reprogram ourselves through repetitive singing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool,
Good.
huh?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But then, and I've said, like sometimes when I'm teaching at Runyon, people will have like loud music, and like some of the I like a lot of the early rap stuff, especially as I was younger, like NWA, and that stuff was like NWA and the first Guns N' Roses album are like that is Los Angeles in 1987. It's like the news. It's like the real news, because that is what was here. I was here. That's what was here. Um, but I listened to some of the music and like there's just people walking by, and it's like this. It's a nursery rhyme, right? And it's these messages that are over and over. And as you had said earlier, we're not. Some of the stuff is not a positive uh, brainwashing of ourselves.
Yeah.
But I understand why it exists, and because I believe that it shows us that we are a culture of people that are reaching for something. There's an insecurity, and I think some of it is based on capitalism, and that we're in competition with the neighbor with the better television, and so we have I mean, a lot of that music came out of society that was on the lower realm of things financially. So they didn't have access to the things that you see on television. It's like, well, why don't I have access, to that hotel or that car? So and then it became this cultural thing, and we're all imprinted now with this lack, this like, I need to be more, I'm not enough. Because that's sometimes the message I'm hearing, because the message of we're on a highway to hell, and maybe I haven't listened enough to some of the modern, maybe it's hip hop or whatever. It seems like it's like we're all trying to get to this other thing, which we're not quite yet. We need to be rich and to have something really fucking cool or whatever. But when I listen to like something like Highway to Hell, there's a togetherness. Like there's a like we're all in this together, and this is where we are, and this is really we're okay with that. It's cool. It's a different message. It's a different societal message, which has created a different kind of community. The difference of a community where like we're going to celebrate our troubles, or we're going to celebrate in our togetherness, where we're going to celebrate what we don't have. We need to get this shit, but that is part of the capitalist model, because it's like the caste system without the caste system of India, except for that you're supposedly allowed to move up the ladder,
Right.
and moving up the ladder is like the first taste of enlightenment. You're better. Isn't this great? And that's there's a problem with that, in my opinion.
Yeah. How do you describe your music?
Well, it would depend on which music, because I do still play rock and roll a bit. And
What do you like to play best?
I never performed the Dharma Gypsys albums.
Okay.
They have never been performed. They were not, the closest to performance was in the recording studio. I would sometimes play with one musician at a time. So that the second album was me playing with the drummer. That was done live. And then everything else was done as an after effect. So there's a different experience with that. I do like the music that I created doing that, but it holds a different space for me. I do still love loud rock and roll. I believe that it scares away evil spirits. I believe that it cleanses the mind. I believe that it is just the act of electricity and the volume and the ignorance of it is just so powerful that it's like a tidal wave. It just like, I remember Pete Townsend of The Who saying, they said, why do you play so loud? He said, well, when we play this loud, no one's going to be talking to the girl next to them trying to get, her phone number or something. All they're going to get is us. And as a player of that, that's a powerful to put on the audience. But as a facilitator of that, as someone who is, even if you're playing songs that you already know, as you're channeling through with several other people, like this team of, shamanic vibrational people, and people beating the drums, and people using this electricity to penetrate the ignorance of modern man. I like that. I like really loud, fucking stupid rock and roll, but not stupid like, hey, we're all just going to get drunk. And I don't, I don't sing a lot. I do some, but there's something about just that the 4/4, boom, the heartbeat, and then these loud, and then moments of improvisation, and people working together, and people watching the people working together, and the information loop, that, because it's a lot like I feel when I teach yoga too. So I'm sending something out, and then there's something coming back, and I'm sending something out, and it's not even rhythmic. It's circular, like Indian music, and it never stops. And it's just, I send, I receive, I send, I receive, and they're sending and receiving, although they're not aware of it. The listener, because they're giving something back to the performer. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah,
It's the
I
same.
agree.
Yeah, I mean, it feels the same as teaching.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's something about that type of rock and roll, like it's really, it gives you power.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Sometimes this, like, one of my favorite songs to sing when I'm on a cover band gig is Shook Me All Night Long,
Oh yeah,
AC/DC.
right.
It just like takes over me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about AC/DC is, like, a lot of people's, it's very simple. Like the drummer, we were auditioning a drummer for my band at one time, and we were doing a song like AC/DC, and he's auditioning for a rock band, and he's supposed to be a rock drummer. And he's like, I don't want to play like that, because it's seen as this thing but that's what makes it great. And that's a whole other discussion about why you're auditioning for a band and saying you don't want to play with one of the best bands in the world. But that Phil Rudd, who has his problems as a human being, but Phil Rudd is the drummer for AC/DC. That is so simple. It is nothing. It's a heartbeat, and it never stops. And that simplicity is more powerful than, say, I'm trying to think, whatever. Not Buddy Rich. I mean, Buddy Rich is a powerful jazz drummer, although he's passed. But like anyone who's playing very complicated, this simplicity is just as powerful, but in a different way. And then Angus, and well, I mean, his brother, I think, wrote most of the riffs. But this guitar playing, which is giant spaces, boom, ksh, boom, ksh, bam, ksh, and it's very like, it becomes like, it's very like this big human, like they're creating this big spirit being that comes down onto the people. It's amazing. It's totally fucking amazing.
Totally.
Yeah. We are almost 2 hours in.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people your website?
Yeah, sure. So my regular music, I guess, I don't know what to call it, is just my name, emmacairo.com, and that's Cairo, like the capital of Egypt. And the other stuff that I do is nordicmusicmagic.com.
Right. All right.
Do you want to tell yours?
Yeah, my website is danieloverberger.com. It has mostly my yoga stuff. It has my podcast, and it has my so-called yoga music. As far as my rock and roll world, you're going to have to try to find me.